I don't think Kentucky's that good of a football team. Really hadn't played anybody worth their salt. They played Vanderbilt, and hell, we could get 8 guys together and probably go compete for a half.
All right, everybody, thank you guys for joining us. We are very excited not only to have you here as usual, but to bring on our celebrity guest picker. That's right, Mr. Andy Staples from On3. They're doing incredible work over there. Got a ton of respect for his show. It's fantastic. You can catch him all over social media. Podcast is great. It's got great interviews. Had one with Audric Estime the other day that I thought was fantastic. Andy, thanks for hopping on, bro.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, man, let's get right into it. We got the games, obviously, at the end that we've got circled that we're going to make our picks on. I know you've already put some spreads out. You feel good about this week. Nice week for you last week. I've been keeping up with what you put on. Go ahead.
I have a rule on my show that we have a guest picker every week that they are allowed to change their picks for their own show or on my show. They can have completely different picks. So do those rules apply here? Because
Andy, they apply 100%.
You live your life, Andy.
You live your life, number one. And number two,
Very nice.
you hedge it however you want.
So what is the strategy there? A little hedge action, or are you just going all in on what you feel?
Well,
I'm probably going all in. So here's what happened a couple weeks ago. We do a pick show every week. The first couple of weeks, we didn't put anything out with what the picks were. And we realized, well, that's silly. We need to make sure we advertise this. And so for week 3, we put out a graphic with 8 of the 13 picks that I gave out on the show. And our social media guru, Jack, he goes, all right, which of these do you feel most confident in? I'm like, I'm confident in all of them.
Oh, yeah. Throw the whole bag out.
Gentlemen, I was perfect. I was 0-8.
Hey,
golden sombrero.
Unbelievable.
Hey, golden sombrero.
Hey, been there before.
Well,
Andy.
we
Don't
always
worry about
say,
that.
listen. I would much rather. I know you had a better week last week. Obviously, that's kind of one of the anomalies. We bet every day, so we know how that goes. But I always say I would much rather either trail somebody that is 8-0 or fade somebody that is 0-8. Because just like when I used to tell my DBs in coverage, hey, if we're all wrong, we're all right. If we get the wrong call, let's all run the same thing.
First week betting, it's BP swings.
Yeah.
BP
It's BP swings early.
BP bets, get the balance. That's why we go to the range. Now we're locked in.
Hands inside, go the other way. But, Andy, speaking about going the other way, Colorado started out hot, 3-0. We know the schedule got more difficult last week against an Oregon team that I feel, in a loaded Pac-12, which looks like the best conference in college football, is probably the most complete team, at least up to this point, that we've seen offensively, defensively, special teams, and up front playing complementary football. But now they host a USC team. Caleb Williams versus Shedeur Sanders. There's no Travis Hunter, but they do match up better, at least in my opinion, with USC. I think they're going to be able to score more. Shedeur will be able to evade and create. He won't just be able to be taken down by a 4-man rush. Are you seeing Colorado being able to hang around in this one longer? And do you see it being the Globetrotters game from a scoring standpoint that a lot of us are anticipating?
I think USC can name its score, but I think Colorado can score some. I don't know how long they can hang. That's the thing. USC, if this were last year's USC's defense, I'd be saying whatever the total is, take the over, add 10 to it, still take the over.
Yep.
Because I don't know that last year's USC team would be able to get enough pressure on Shedeur Sanders to really cause any problems. This one can. They can get pressure up the middle from Bear Alexander. They've done a good job just getting in there and really aggravating quarterbacks this year. They're better up front than they have been. Now their defense is, I think, is too complicated. I think you usually have the better athletes. Just let them out athlete people instead of doing a lot of they'll have these double twists on and it's just crazy stuff that you don't need to be doing against inferior competition. And they got gashed on a couple of those against Arizona State last week. But I do think Shedeur is going to be able to lead Colorado to some scores. It won't be like Oregon where they were just hopeless in that game, because Oregon's line of scrimmage play is just better probably than anybody in the Pac-12. Washington's up there too. But Oregon has dudes on the offensive and defensive lines. USC has a very good offensive line. USC has some dudes on the defensive line now that they didn't really have last year.
Yeah, and it's addition by subtraction is what we used to call it. Make it simpler, let them play. You don't want paralysis by analysis. I will say too, when I look at Lincoln Riley and I look at guys like Dan Lanning, DeBoer, all these guys in the Pac-12, even though Colorado's going to the Big 12 and you're seeing some movement from some of these teams going to the Big 10, they're still going to be recruiting each other against each other. And we know On3, you guys are covering recruiting like crazy over there, do a really good job. But do you think this is, because we know Deion's going to get the linemen in. Like Colorado is not going to be operating with a short deck up front for long. We know they got the skill guys in there. They're going to have some coming back. Do you think this is the time for Lincoln Riley and them to really try and drive the knife in deep, so when they go in that living room and they're not Deion Sanders, they can say, listen, all this stuff's great, the bells and whistles, Michael Irvin on the sideline and Post Malone and all these guys, but we dropped a 50-piece with Cajun fries and some nuggies on the side on them in year one. Do you think they're going to bury that knife in a little bit deeper early?
I think it wouldn't hurt, because you're right. They will have to recruit against each other, even though they're going to be in different leagues. Colorado is still going to go out to Southern California for players, and they will run into each other on the trail. So absolutely, the more you can say you'd rather be here than there, the better chance you have. Because the thing is, I was going through some of the stuff that Colorado put out on social media and on their YouTube channel after the loss. Like, even after they got smoked, it still looks like a cool place to play. Yeah. If you're a 17-year-old, like you're watching those videos that Deion Sanders Jr. puts out, and you're like, man, that would be fun. Like, even after they got destroyed by Oregon. So I think all of those programs are going to want to kind of plant a flag when they're playing Colorado to say, here's why you should come play for us instead. Because Deion is going to get his share of players. There are going to be a lot of guys who, one, just want to go see what it's like. Mm-hmm. And then when they get there, they're going to be like, you know what? I do want this.
Yeah. Well, regardless of how good Lincoln Riley cooks his brisket from now on, that prime,
the portal,
prime's
going to
He's cooking fish now.
Yeah, smart man.
Yeah, it's hard to
overcook fish.
Yeah.
Andy, I want to talk to you about Nebraska hosting Michigan. We know about Jim Harbaugh being suspended for the first 3 games. Wolverines still handled business. Last week started Big Ten play against Rutgers. Rutgers hits a 69-yard touchdown to open things up. Michigan still handles business, though. Now they go on the road for the first time this season. We were talking a lot about Nebraska and the game that they were playing against Colorado. Jeff Sims, the bad turnovers at inopportune times. This line is -17 Michigan, over/under now down to 39. What does Nebraska have to do to keep this thing close, and how are you feeling about the over/under number there?
Hope J.J. McCarthy drops a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the total feels about right, because I don't know how Nebraska's going to score on them. That's the problem. Is Nebraska's defense is pretty good too. I just think they're getting worn out because they keep having to come back on the field. And Michigan's one of those teams that, if you've got to run too many plays against them, they will eventually wear you down, even if you're having a decent game against them. I thought Rutgers played really well early in that game, but then Michigan did what Michigan does in the second half, where you just sort of lean on them, and those yards per carry get more and more and more and more and more. And, I still, they don't really need to break out. They don't have to break the J.J. McCarthy glass in this game, where they could have a very explosive passing offense if they want to. They may try some things just for fun, but they're not going to need it. I just think Michigan's defense is going to corral Nebraska's offense fairly easily. Because remember, they changed quarterbacks. They went with Heinrich Haarberg, who's not as dynamic as Jeff Sims, but doesn't hand the ball to the other team the way Jeff Sims was doing.
Yeah.
The trade-off there is you don't get the positive plays either. And I don't know how Nebraska is going to move the ball on that.
I agree that Michigan won't need to break out that passing game, but what's interesting is Nebraska's run D is better than their pass D. I mean, we saw that against Minnesota. We saw that against Colorado. So I wonder if Michigan will do some things with J.J. McCarthy just to get ready for the rest of the season.
Why not get creative?
To get him in tune.
Well, if you're going to put some stuff on
I think they should. I think last year it took them a while, and they really didn't. Now, he came through when asked against Ohio State.
Sure.
Yeah, those 2 Cornelius Johnson touchdown passes that really kept them alive until they could start really running the ball in Ohio State. And I think just to be ready for what's next, whether it's Penn State, Ohio State, or if they make the playoff, I'm with you. Let them have some fun. And in a game like this, even if you make a mistake, or let's say you throw a pick, your defense is going to bail you out anyway.
For sure. And it's good tape. I mean, it's good tape. If you're going to make a mistake, it's good tape to be able to come back and say, hey, listen, it's something we want to run later in the year. we don't want to give away too many tendencies, but this is what we need to do. But I just feel like watching Michigan right now is like when they have those arm wrestling competitions and one guy is obviously stronger than the other guy and they're like stalemating and you can tell that other guy is like just fighting to stalemate while the big guy just holds it. And eventually he just slowly starts smushing you down. Like that's just how it's been so far. But Georgia and Michigan going on the road.
And Michigan doesn't even look like they played their best game yet.
They haven't.
Michigan's having quality at bats. Michigan's missing pitches, but it looks really
Your baseball references are on point right now.
Really good when they're missing. Andy, this one I walk to right now, a little SEC East battle. Got South Carolina versus Tennessee. I believe Tennessee is sitting at a 12.5-point favorite. Big win for South Carolina, beating Mississippi State 37-30. Tennessee, big win against UTSA. Joe Milton, Spencer Rattler. How do you see this game going, Andy?
It depends on where Joe Milton's at with his knee. So he went out during the UTSA game, came back with a brace on, was not playing all that well. Wasn't playing particularly well to start. Like if you go back to the Florida game, and it's weird. It's hard to tell with Tennessee what they were missing against Florida. It felt like Florida limited them in the run game, and that in turn limited them in the pass game. If you look at the history of this offense they run, it goes back to the old Art Briles Baylor offense.
Yep.
And really, it's an offense designed to run for 300 yards and throw for 200 yards. And everybody thinks it's all verticals and you're just chucking the ball down the field. It doesn't work if you can't run. And so the question is, can South Carolina do anything about that? The other question is, can South Carolina protect Spencer Rattler? We saw them just get decimated by North Carolina. Now, Georgia did not hit Rattler as much, and Rattler played pretty well in that game, considering the talent gap. So I actually think South Carolina could go up there and cover that spread. I don't know if they'll win the game, but I think they can cover that spread. And with Milton, the question is, how healthy is he? He runs fast, but I would argue he's not as good of a runner as Hendon Hooker was. Hendon Hooker could get you out of trouble. He was an opportune runner. He knew when to take off, where to slide, how to get a first down, just keep things moving. With Milton, you haven't really seen that yet.
Yeah. I mean, Hendon was a little more quick twitch to me.
Yeah.
Like Joe Milton,
like
once he gets going, that long strider, he's kind of a heavier runner. I will say what I find fascinating, Andy, and going back to that South Carolina, or excuse me, that Tennessee-Florida game, was Florida was able to run the ball against that Tennessee front seven a lot better than what I thought going into the game, and it helped Graham Mertz out, helped Pearsall out. The play-action game was good. South Carolina struggles so much up front on the offensive line. I don't know if they'll be able to have that success running the ball. So do you take a page out of what South Carolina did in the first half against Georgia and what Colorado did to TCU and supplement the run game with the quick passing game, working the perimeter? I thought South Carolina got away from that in the second half, and it really surprised me. I agree with you, man. I find it fascinating, but if South Carolina can't run, as much as we love Spencer Rattler, and I said yesterday, earlier in the week that he's the most important player to his team out of anybody in the country, he's not going to win the Heisman. I do think Tennessee wins, but
I think South Carolina right now averages 70 yards on the ground, and Tennessee averages 220.
Yeah, that's a big difference. But if Joe Milton can't run, that does take a page out of that playbook, because it is an RPO system. And like Andy was saying, Josh Heupel wants to run it, Lane Kiffin wants to run it, Lincoln Riley wants to run it, Jeff Lebby wants to run it. There's a lot of misconceptions about offenses out there. But before we get into our picks, Andy, last one we want to preview, Auburn and Georgia. Georgia, that line's kind of come down, started out as high as 16.5, 17 in some places, got bet down. Auburn's offense, the quarterback problem right now is obviously very glaring. Do you think with Carson Beck going on the road for his first time, they're gonna continue like they did in the second half against South Carolina to take the training wheels off of them? Are they going to protect them and let Auburn hang around a little bit in this game?
I think we're due for a Georgia not slow start.
Yeah,
finally. I think it feels like they've been getting a little more comfortable. And I don't know, maybe I'm just completely swayed by that video they released from halftime of the South Carolina game when Carson Beck winks at the camera and they're down 14-3 and you're like, oh, okay, this is different. These guys, this is why these guys have won 2 straight national championships. But I do think with the weapons they have, they're still, and remember, Mike Bobo is just calling plays for the first time with this group. He's obviously a very experienced play caller, but you got to get comfortable with this quarterback, with the skill guys you have and what you're good at. And so I do think there's been an adjustment period as far as that goes with Todd Monken leaving, but I think they're due for that. Auburn has got to figure out what to do offensively, and whether maybe it's not Peyton Thorne, maybe he's not the guy, or is it Hugh Freeze needs to call plays. I mean, if you heard Hugh Freeze this week, he said, I'm struggling with not calling plays. And it was his choice to not call plays. He gets the job. He'd been calling plays at Liberty. He called plays at Ole Miss. And he said, you know what? The job is so big now. The CEO aspects of an SEC job are so big now. I'm going to hire an offensive coordinator who will call the plays. He hires Philip Montgomery, who was Bryles' OC at Baylor.
Yep.
Then he was the head coach at Tulsa. So, similar DNA of the offense, but not the same offense. And I think Hugh's struggling with it. He's been pretty open about struggling with it. I don't necessarily, if you've never met Hugh Freeze, you'd assume he's just throwing Montgomery under the bus. I don't think that's the case. I think he's just being honest that he did not realize how tough it was going to be for him in game to not be the guy calling the plays.
Yeah. Well, I always say you got to this point because of that ability. So once you get to the highest level and you give up that ability, that's like Robert Oppenheimer saying, all right, now I'm working on the A-bomb. I'm not going to do any more of the physics.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring somebody else in to do the physics. Well, it's hard to do.
I mean, but stuff like this needs to get figured out. It needs to get figured out now.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't want a Texas A&M situation.
Well, again, if you don't have the pieces.
Week out, am I calling plays? Is he calling plays? Because it's just, that's how toxicity starts.
Well, it is, but if you don't have the pieces of the puzzle at quarterback, it doesn't matter if Moses is calling the plays. It's not going to work. And it's, again, we've seen great play callers look like idiots because they didn't have
100%.
Wait, was Moses a good play caller? I thought
he was.
I thought the plays were handed him.
Did you
on
see the
tablets.
Red Sea?
Listen. I don't know about play calling, but he had a hell of a staff. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here all week. All right, good.
That was solid.
I'm not a dad yet, but I got him for days. All right, David, let's get in.
Let's do it.
David Pollack is leading the guest pickers. Jeff Foxworthy, Jeff Collins, David Pollack went 4-1 last week. If Notre Dame puts 11 guys on the field, all right, puts 11 guys on the field.
You can't do that, dude. They'll get a penalty.
Yeah.
Are these straight up or against the spread? That's
straight up.
Straight up. Okay, all right.
Yep. Straight up.
Up money.
Start with LSU at Ole Miss. That's been bouncing around. We've been staying about 2.5 there on the line, 67 over under. LSU got all they could handle from Arkansas last week. We know about the offensive struggles for Ole Miss at Alabama. How you got this one going?
Man, Lane Kiffin typically doesn't do very well the week after he plays Alabama. Nobody typically does. Ole Miss up front, again, I just have a hard time trusting them after what I saw against Tulane, after what I saw against Alabama. Jackson Dart, to me, I know he can extend the play, but Ole Miss, the plan going into Alabama to attack them in the intermediate passing game and get away from the run game when they struggle with the deep third passing game off play action, and regardless of Quinshon Judkins' health, you got to find a way to try and at least pound at it enough to make them honor it. I think LSU didn't play great against Arkansas defensively. Harold Perkins is going to have one of those crazy games. I think it's this game where he goes nuts. Jaden Daniels keeps working his way into that Heisman conversation. I love Brian Thomas. Mason Taylor coming back, I believe. And then obviously the witch, Malik Neighbors on the outside.
Lambeau, baby.
Give me LSU to cover.
Big cover.
The -2.5. Even if it goes up to -3, I like LSU. I like a lot of points. Give me the Bengal Tigers by a touchdown.
Lane Kiffin, 1-20 against Power 5 teams who win more than 9 games.
1-19.
1-19. I'm picking LSU, so we'll go ahead and throw 1-20. Don't trust them, and you bet your ass LSU is going to win more than 9 games. Give me LSU and the cover. Played up to 6.5.
Wow. All right, Andy, you going the other way on this one?
So it's very interesting, and you guys make very compelling cases. And the 1-19 stat is the one that sticks out to me, which is why it's very hard for me to say all of what I'm about to say. So the analytics community is very different from Vegas on this game. Yep. Like there's a 5-point spread between the nerds and the sharps. So they've got Ole Miss as like a 3-point favorite in this game. And all I can think of is the reason for that is we saw Ole Miss's defense against Alabama's run game last week. It slowed them pretty considerably, forced Jalen Milroe to beat them with his arm, which he did. And I think LSU's run game will be slowed by Ole Miss. I don't know that LSU's pass game will get slowed by Ole Miss, but I do know that Ole Miss, unlike last week, will get to throw against LSU's secondary. And when you get to throw against LSU's secondary, you got a shot. So I think this game could be pretty high scoring. I think it could look pretty similar to LSU Arkansas last week. And if it does, I think there's a good chance Ole Miss wins it. So I'm gonna take Ole Miss to win
I love it.
Wow,
Love it.
Well, Vegas versus the Nerds, those two twins they have underneath the casino.
Yeah,
Versus Jonah
locked
Hill and the
up.
boys.
Yeah,
That was a Tom Cruise movie. Well, I agree with parts of all of you. I do think it's going to be high scoring. I don't think Ole Miss is going to have back-to-back games with his poor performance on offense is at. Lane Kiffin heard all the comments. Like, he wants to go score points, and I think they will. But I still like LSU in the game, and I like them to cover, just like y'all.
Sooner or later, what you said, Harold Perkins is going to show
Gonna
up.
happen. Speaking of
He's gonna
Oppenheimer,
show up.
it's
He
a
break the
bio
cage
doc.
and he
Harold
get
Perkins.
this.
Eat this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next
Pointy's
one
scary.
up. Syracuse hosting Clemson. We've been talking about it all week. -6.5, over under about 53. Do it. Do it, Jake.
Do it.
Pick the orange.
Listen, the Spidey senses have just been going off the chart. Okay?
Really?
I've been Tobey Maguire in for the past 4 days about this.
Schrader.
But I know it's the dream crusher spot. Syracuse always plays them close. They always play them close. It's in the Carrier Dome, which, like I said, I'm not going to call it the new one. I do like Clemson to win this game. I don't think Cade Clemson's going to play as good as he did last week, but with Gadsden out, they know Garrett Schrader's going to try and hammerhead his way in the run game through it. I like Clemson to win, but Syracuse to cover. I'm not going to do it. Bacardi and Cola.
Do it. Blaine.
All right now, Syracuse has a 55% chance to win this game.
Well,
It's weird because the
55%
spread's
You
wrong.
flip that coin.
completely different. Man, I just like Clemson in this game. I think Schrader's a good player, but I think Dabo and what he's built at Clemson, that's the way he gets those guys up every week. They're not the defense is not as good as they were last year for Syracuse. And I think Will Shipley's a problem. I think Will Shipley will be a problem in this game. I think he goes over for a $120. I feel like Clemson covers, played up to 9.5.
Andy?
The team that Clemson took to overtime last week, Florida State, is a lot better than Syracuse.
Yep.
And I don't think Clemson's quitting because they lost 2 ACC games. I did not get the sense watching that Florida State game that anybody's going to be out on this season. I still feel like Dabo's got that team together. They should be okay. I don't know that they're going to be all that good this season by their own standards because they still have to play North Carolina and they still have to play Miami, but they still have to play Notre Dame. But I think they're good enough to beat Syracuse. Now let's look at Syracuse 4-0. One of those games is Western Michigan. Western Michigan is the team that gave up 41 to Iowa.
Yeah.
So Purdue was the big non-conference win. Purdue hadn't been good against anybody. They've lost to Fresno State. Wisconsin made it look easy against them last week. So I just think that Clemson, if they'd won against Florida State, this is where I'd be picking Syracuse to win. But Clemson needs this badly. They need something to go right for them. And if they play the way they did against Florida State, they're going to beat Syracuse.
Yeah, I agree with you on them not quitting, but give me Syracuse,
You're gonna go Syracuse?
+6.5.
You
Okay,
changed
so,
up.
all right, so you're taking Clemson to win, or you?
I'll
picking-
take Clemson to win the game,
Okay.
but the 6.5 was a little bit surprising to me. I think the Orange are fighting for a lot too at home. We saw last year they started 7-0, 6-0, something like that, and then went on that bad skid that kind of started on the road at Clemson. I like them with the
Second
points,
half.
but take Clemson to win the football game. All right, next one up: Texas A&M. Arkansas, neutral site, +6 Razorbacks, over under bouncing around 54, something like that. Jake?
Look, I'm picking this game sucks. Let's be honest. I know that A&M has had Arkansas's numbers. Something crazy happens in this game all the time. A&M, losing Cutter Wegman. Obviously, it's very unfortunate, but you got a capable backup in Max Johnson, a guy who's got the unteachable and tangible, which is experience. We've talked about a lot. Something crazy always happens in this game. Arkansas, are they mentally drained from the game against LSU? 6-point underdog, I think, going into this game. But you get Rocket Sanders back.
Yep.
All right. I believe in Sam Pittman. I had Arkansas going 9-3 before the end of the year. I need him to win this one. So I'm going to try and will it to existence. I've been eating pork all week.
Atta boy.
All right.
Atta
All right,
boy.
I'm eating bacon
Does that
every
work
morning.
against you?
Yeah.
No, not the way I look
How does
at it.
that work?
No, get out of my head.
You
dude.
killed the hogs.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, somebody had to do it. Now I'm going to let somebody
Be
not
one
kill
with the hog. That's
Jimbo at some point, and I love what Bobby Petrino's done. Max Johnson, like I said, I like him a lot, but I'm going with Arkansas in this one. I think
Wow.
Arkansas wins this game, and then all of a sudden, that level of craziness in College Station beep, 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 gets back turned up to 1,000 knots.
Yeah, I think at this point, I think KJ Jefferson's just really sick of doing everything by himself, which what he's been doing his basically entire career at Colorado. I was watching that LSU game. Some points he'd look at the camera, and I felt bad for the guy. I think Texas A&M comes out and wins this game big.
Really?
I think what a luxury for Texas A&M to have, losing your starting quarterback, and you put experienced Max Johnson out there, a crafty lefty. His dad can hit impossible basketball shots. So I believe in a lot of things when it comes to A&M. And you're going against LSU, that gut-wrenching loss.
We love Brad
That's
here.
the way it hurts. We love Brad. Yeah, we love Brad. But I think A&M, I think Max comes out, looks good. I think Jimbo has the defense to get ready. I think KJ plays good, but makes a couple mistakes. I'd play this game up to A&M 9.5.
Wow.
Andy?
I think Arkansas has been through the ringer the past couple of weeks. The BYU game was a tough one for them. It was kind of back and forth. And then the LSU game was very emotionally draining. I believe in Sam Pittman too. I love Sam Pittman. I'm just not sure this is their year. And the A&M thing, there's a chance Max Johnson was the better of the two quarterbacks.
Screaming from a mountain, Andy.
Yeah. I don't know that for certain, but I do feel like he's already shown he can be a capable SEC starting quarterback when he was at LSU. Yeah. And now you got Bobby Petrino calling plays for him. You got talent around him. I think Texas A&M probably calms everybody down, at least for a little while. Then Alabama shows up, and then we'll get back to the existential crises. But yeah, no, I think they win it.
I agree with the statement you made about Max Johnson last year. Like, I thought he should have been the starter over Haynes King, and we got that far too late in the season. Connor Wegman, I think, even with the small sample size we've seen, has proven to be an incredible quarterback, and it's a tough loss. I hate that for them. But the fall off to Max Johnson, like, he may be one of the best backup quarterbacks in the entire country. Having said that, I thought I'd be the only person to do this, but I'm going to be bet budget.
You're riding?
I'm going to take Arkansas.
You're riding?
There's no love loss between the people of Arkansas and anything to do with the state of Texas. Will they be physically drained from the last 2 weeks? Will they be emotionally drained? How much will that play a factor?
Well, I'm emotionally drained.
I can't wait for this football game, to be honest. I'm going to ride with Arkansas in this one as well. Next one up, Florida at Kentucky. I mean, Florida's been playing better football than what we thought at the beginning of the year. Kentucky's still undefeated, though. This one's about -1.5, something like that, over under 45, Jake.
Man, picking this one's like getting jumped by a gang of ninjas when you're just walking to the gas station. That's either way. I mean, this is why the spread's so tight. I will say, stats say Florida gives up some of the most explosive plays in the country. They rank close to last in giving up explosive plays. Kentucky ranks near the top in making explosive plays. Doesn't make them a great offense, but they hit a lot of plays down the field, 30% play action offensively. I like Kentucky's defense. Don't trust the offensive line for Kentucky. Devin Leary goes to the panic room with Jody Foster every time somebody gets pressure. But at home, I think Florida kind of reverts back to maybe who some of us thought they were before that win at Tennessee. I think they make a couple big-time mistakes. Give me Mark Stoops. Give me the Wildcats. Ray Davis, 2 touchdowns.
Really?
Nasty, sneaky.
I don't think Kentucky's that good of a football team.
I don't think they are either. I don't think Florida's that good.
They really hadn't played anybody worth their salt. They played Vanderbilt, and hell, we could get 8 guys together and probably go compete for a half. I think Florida right now is more athletic and a better team than Kentucky. Devin Leary hadn't looked the same since he left NC State. And if you watch Kentucky, they haven't looked great the entire year. Grant Mertz surprised me, all right? What you saw at Wisconsin, not the same guy. At Florida, he's calm, he's cool, he's confident in the pocket, he's collected. Billy looks like he's doing a great job. Pearsall, one of the best receivers in the SEC.
Fact.
And I've been really hard on Billy Napier. I'll say that. But right now, he's kind of proven me wrong a little bit, which is refreshing because I like Billy. I like the job he does. But I feel like this is going to be weird to say because the Mark Stoops team is usually what? Really good up front on both sides of the ball, stops the run. I think Florida dominates this game in the trenches. Give me Florida. Play it up to 2.5, -2.5.
And a name you didn't say, Trevor Etienne.
Trevor Etienne, too, as well, yeah.
Andy, how you feeling?
So this one's tough because it is a bit of a coin flip. And, I was back and forth. We did our pick show Wednesday night, and it was like 30 minutes after Florida had announced that Kingsley Gallatin, their starting center, was going to play. And so the only game he's played all year was Tennessee, which is the most functionally competent their offensive line has looked all season. And that includes, Charlotte and McNeese. So I just, with him in there, I think that makes a big difference. The other thing about Florida that I find interesting, so if you go back to the Tennessee game, they started off trying to force feed a freshman receiver named Eugene Wilson. They tried to get him as many touches as they could. He gets hit, hurts his collarbone, goes out for the rest of that game. Really didn't make much of an impact on that game, and they end up winning it anyway. He'll be back this week too. I'm guessing they will try to force feed him touches as well. He's the most dynamic guy with the ball in his hands Florida has had since Kadarius Toney. So can they up the explosiveness factor on offense with him. If they can, I like them. The thing about Kentucky, I'm with you. I think Ray Davis pops a couple, but they have got to be careful because you talked about Devin Leary under pressure. Florida is going to get pressure. Austin Armstrong, their new DC, is a pretty creative play caller, but also they're just better defensively than they have been the last few years. So I think this is going to be really close, and I think it's going to come down to who takes care of the ball better. Florida has not asked Graham Mertz to do much. I think Devin Leary is going to get asked to do some things, and maybe that's the difference. So I will go with the Gators on this one.
All right, I'm going to team up.
Sneaky, really good game this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to team up with y'all too. I'm going to take Florida as well. A large part of the story when they beat Tennessee was that game being in the swamp, but that's not the whole story. I really like a lot of the pieces that this team has. And, it wasn't pretty against Utah, but at some point, people around the country are going to have to start acknowledging that Utah is just a really good football team.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take Florida as
Love
well
it.
on the
Love
road.
it.
All right, last weekend, the game of the week, Notre Dame. We know about the 10 men on the field against the Buckeyes. Kyle McCord drives them down, wins that football game. Now they go on the road to Duke. This is a team that's already beaten Clemson. We've been talking about it all week. I'm really excited for this football game. Plus 5.5, Duke over under 53. Your thoughts now?
Well, if I was going to bet it, which I'm not, I would take the under, and I would not touch a side on this game. Look, Duke, incredible story last year. Everybody said they can't win the turnover battle like they did last year. They're not going to sneak up on anybody this year, and their schedule's a lot harder. Well, they're still undefeated with Notre Dame coming into town. When they beat Clemson, they took advantage of a lot of Clemson mistakes, from pre-snap reads to play calls in the red zone, not going tempo. Notre Dame made some mistakes defensively at the end last week, obviously against Ohio State. I don't see them doing that again. I don't see them turning the ball over when they get in the red zone like Clemson did. I like Notre Dame to win this game. I think it's going to be low scoring and ugly because I trust Notre Dame's defense. I think they're more athletic in the back end than they have been in a while. Give me the Fighting Irish to bounce back, experience, old heads, that travels. Crazy atmosphere at Duke, biggest game in the history of their college football program. But give me Sam Hartman, who may actually really be the mascot and the quarterback at the same time. Have we seen them both in the same room?
Look, my head's telling me to go with Notre Dame, but my heart's telling me to go with Duke.
Okay.
So
I think I'm going to go with my heart on this and give me the boys and give me Dookie.
Riley.
Blue Devils.
I think Notre Dame, super experienced team. I think they're a complete team. I think that Ohio State, I don't think anybody realistically lost that Ohio State game. Both great teams, but I do think SMA, which you bring up on the show multiple times, he will do what?
Fumble.
He will put the ball on the ground at key moments. Close game. SMA, big fumble. Give me Duke. Game-winning field goal.
God, they'll go nuts.
Andy?
All right, so I think if Notre Dame had hung on and beaten Ohio State, I would be very happy to pick Duke right now.
Yep. Yeah.
But I think Notre Dame is in a position where they need this and they need to bounce back. And you just, like I talked to Audric on Monday. I was up in South Bend and talked to Marcus Freeman for a little while. They're handling that loss well. They handled it constructively. And I think they're going to be ready to come play. They obviously, there's no illusion that Duke is the Duke of old. They understand this is a very good team they're playing. If you ask an NFL scout who's the best quarterback in this game, they're going to say Riley Leonard. So I do think Sam Hartman's experience matters a lot. One name I will mention, though, Audric's going to be the guy carrying the ball a lot for Notre Dame, but Jeremiah Love's going to get fed more and more and more and more. And you saw that in the Ohio State game as the game went on. He's dynamic. And I just think Notre Dame is going to play probably a clean, hopefully fairly mistake-free, hopefully 11 guys on the field kind of game. I think Notre Dame wins it.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, I love what Mike Elko's built over there. We're going to call Riley Leonard's name for a long time, I think, playing on Sundays. But the same way that I don't think Clemson has any quit in them after a tough loss last weekend, I don't think Notre Dame's going to quit either. They have an uphill battle because they won't have the benefit of playing in a conference championship at the end of the season. But still, if they win out and they have some big games, and this is one of them, then they're still in that postseason conversation. I'm going to take the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for all the reasons that I've liked them all the way this season. They run the ball well, they play good defense, and they have an experienced quarterback.
That's fine. I'll Jon Snow this thing.
That's fine.
That's fine. Let's go, Duke.
Yeah.
Come on,
that's
Duke.
right,
What's
that's
this
fine.
say above
Okay,
me?
it's
Oh, wait.
It says
Believe.
Rangers.
Yeah.
Believe.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Andy Sables, we don't have the marquee matchups we had last weekend, but it's college football in the NFL.
sir.
I'm happier than a fat kid in a fudge factory.
God.
Thanks so much for joining us. Any parting thoughts before we let you tell everybody where they can find your great stuff?
Well, I just don't get twisted with last weekend's marquee matchups and think, oh, that nothing good's going to happen. This is when the weird stuff happens.
That's exactly right.
So just strap in, because I guarantee you Saturday is going to have some oddities, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
It does smell funny. But Andy, tell everybody where they can find your stuff, man. It's absolutely great content. I love checking it out. You're one of the few other sports shows that I actually listen to, considering I do a sports show.
If you want to see my ugly face, the On3 Sports YouTube page, we're on Sunday through Thursday nights. 8 p.m. Eastern is when it premieres, but it's obviously on demand anytime after that. And then if you would like to not look at me, but hear my nasally drone, we're available on every podcast platform. Every show gets uploaded 6 times a week during the season. So we do instant reactions on Saturday. We put those together as a podcast that you can listen to while you make breakfast on Sunday morning. So please come, like, subscribe, leave reviews, and hell yeah, it doesn't get any better than going into a college football Saturday.
Oh, I know. Just put it on a pillow and smother
God,
me to death.
pour it all over me.
I know.
Let me see you get real
Andy,
angry.
thanks so much again, my friend. We really appreciate it. Good luck, too.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it,
All
Andy.
right. We appreciate you joining us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn that notification bell on.